Welcome, and thanks for joining us for another deep dive. This is where we try to cut through all the noise and give you the insights that really matter, especially for you, our listener, in the global Nepalese diaspora.
Exactly. We're excited to unpack the stories shaping Nepal and, how they echo across borders.
This is the Nepali Diaspora Network, your place for news, views, and insights curated to keep you connected and, well-informed.
And that's really our mission, isn't it? We take the week's biggest stories, the complex stuff, the developing headlines, and we boil them down.
Yeah, not just reporting, but getting to the core insights.
Right, giving you that nuanced understanding that goes beyond just the headlines. Think of this as your in-depth audio newsletter, providing the context, the detail you need to really grasp what's happening.
Indeed. And this week, well, it's been a real mix in Nepal, hasn't it? You've got tangible progress, but it's bumping up against these persistent challenges.
From overpasses to overhauls, as the newsletter put it. Exactly. Construction to controversy. So today, we're going to look at things like the new Guarco underpass, a big infrastructure moment.
But then we'll contrast that with major delays, like the Sankoshi Marin project.
And we'll also dig into some crucial policy shifts, the new Customs Act, the Euro 6 standards finally coming in.
Alongside the political dramas, land scams, the visa stuff, it's been quite a week.
It really has. It kind of encapsulates Nepal's dynamic path right now.
And it's so important to remember these things don't happen in isolation. We'll be connecting these dots, how events in Nepal impact the diaspora globally.
Like that new U.S. Embassy social media policy for visa applicants.
Exactly. And the ongoing rescue efforts for Nepalese citizens abroad. We want to give you the full nuanced picture. Make sure you're not just aware, but, deeply informed.
All right, let's kick off our deep dive right there in Nepal, focusing on a pretty significant infrastructure milestone, one that's been years in the making.
The Guarco Underpass. Yes. Nepal's very first underpass in Guarco, Lalitpur. It just got inaugurated. And it's more than just concrete, isn't it? It feels symbolic.
It does. A step forward in tackling that awful traffic congestion.
Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli inaugurated it June 20th, 2025. Cost was around $170.6 million.
Constructed by Ashish Samanantar Religar JV, and it was under that EPC model, engineering, procurement, construction.
Right. And the main goal is just to ease that bottleneck in Guarco Chowk and the surrounding areas. It's been a nightmare for commuters for so long.
And this specific project, it fits right into Prime Minister Oli's broader narrative, his talk of holistic and multidimensional development.
He often brings that up.
He does. And this underpass is presented as, well, a tangible result. Looking at the timeline, the contract was awarded back in February 2022.
So just over 4 years to complete.
Yeah. And that includes the 500-meter approach road, the ramps. It's meant to integrate smoothly. The EPC model is supposed to streamline things, but 4 years.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Even with a success like this, there's always that public skepticism lingering. Nepal's track record with project delays, it hangs heavy.
It really does. It's like people need to see it to believe it, and one project doesn't completely change that perception overnight.
So can one completed project really shift things when so many others are stuck?
That's the million-rupee question, isn't it? And during the inauguration, PM Oli didn't just talk about the underpass. He painted a much bigger picture.
Oh, yeah. What else did he mention?
Well, he brought up the methane gas deposits in Dalik again. Said they're enough for 50 years of energy needs, just from one site.
Wow.
And iron production from Dabadi, boosting the economy, modernizing agriculture, new industries, social reforms, the whole lot.
Plus the other big projects.
Right. Sankoshi Marin Diversion Postal Highway, Madam Mandari Highway, Pushpalal Highway. He said they were all progressing steadily. It's a hugely ambitious agenda.
Okay, but that brings us neatly, if frustratingly, to the Sankoshi Marin Diversion project, also a national pride project.
But facing abysmally slow progress on its dam construction. It's such a stark contrast.
It really is the core issue. Just 7% of the dam work is done. 7%.
Even though half the contract period is gone already, it was signed January 2023, meant to be finished by 2027.
And the cost? Total project is Rs 49 billion. They've already spent 16 billion, but overall physical progress is only 35%. That dam is the major bottleneck.
And the potential here is just enormous. That's what makes the delay so alarming. This project could completely transform agriculture in 5 Tarai districts.
Bara, Raudahat, Sarlahi, Mahatari,
Gosh,
Danusha.
exactly. Irrigating 122,000 hectares year-round. Think about what that means for food security, for farmers' livelihoods.
Game changer.
Totally. Plus, it's supposed to generate over 31 megawatts of electricity. So the stakes are incredibly high agriculture energy. The delays are holding back real economic progress.
And Prime Minister Oli himself sounded pretty furious back in May. He threatened to terminate the contract if things didn't speed up.
He did. He said, delays in development projects are more criminal than corruption itself. Construction must move at rocket speed. Strong words.
Very direct. Shows the level of frustration.
Absolutely. But the systemic issues seem to persist. You know, the project has two main parts. The dam and the tunnel.
And the tunnel part.
That's actually done. A 13.3-kilometer tunnel, completed 3 months ahead of schedule in May 2024 by the Chinese contractor, COEC, cost about Odyssey $10 billion.
So the tunnel's ready and waiting?
Exactly. But it's useless until the dam is built to feed water into it. The dam construction, by Patel Raman JV, that's the holdup. Ours' $14 billion contract.
So one part super efficient, the other not so much.
Precisely. It's a stark contrast.
And the contractor, Patel Raman JV, they have offered reasons for the delay, right?
They have. They mentioned initial problems diverting the river, then those really bad October floods that apparently buried structures, swept away materials.
Plus challenges getting supplies to the site.
Right, difficult terrain. But what's interesting is the disagreement on progress. The contractor claims 14% done.
But the project chief says only 7%.
Exactly. And the contractor says they'll reach 25% in the next 5-6 months. It raises questions about transparency and accountability, doesn't it?
Definitely. Who you believe.
And what does this actually mean for oversight? The implications are critical, especially for the farmers down in Madhesh province. The chief minister, Satish Kumar Singh, has been very critical.
What did he say?
He basically said the tunnel's ready, but dam construction is crawling. The contractor seems irresponsible. He's also warned about terminating the contract.
So pressure from the provincial level, too.
Yes, and from the Department of Water Resources and Irrigation. The Director General, Sanjeev Baral, directly threatened termination for non-performance.
Even though they advanced a mobilization fund.
Yeah, Rs 1.2 billion. Baral even said they'll demand Rs 600 million back if things don't improve. Meanwhile, farmers are stuck relying on the monsoon or expensive boring.
This project could double their crop production, help recharge groundwater.
Absolutely. The delay isn't just a statistic, it's hitting their future prosperity hard.
Okay, let's shift focus now from infrastructure delays to economic reform efforts, the push for a new Customs Act.
Right. Finance Minister Bishnu Prasad Padal has been really pushing for this.
What's the main idea behind it? Seems like a pretty big overhaul.
It is. It aims to streamline customs, make trade easier, faster, more efficient, basically cut down on the hassles.
It boosts the economy.
That's the goal. Plus, protecting domestic industries, simplifying procedures, bringing in more technology, promoting exports and FDI, and cracking down on illegal trade.
And it involves changes to duties and officers' powers, too?
Yes, it's comprehensive. Amends and consolidates 154 clauses. It's already been through the House Finance Committee, now it's with the National Assembly.
But there was some concern about the timeline.
Yeah, the committee chairperson mentioned getting this huge bill just 5 days before their response deadline. That's tight.
Especially with 21 lawmakers proposing changes to 133 points already.
Exactly. It raises questions about how thoroughly such a complex bill can be reviewed under that kind of pressure.
And this feels like that classic Nepalese challenge, doesn't it? Turning ambitious laws into practical, well-executed reforms.
Absolutely. The gap between writing the law and making it work on the ground, implementation is everything.
Okay, sticking with policy changes, let's talk environment. Nepal's adopting Euroconiferous emission standards. Finally.
Yes, after years of delay. This kicked in June 23, 2025, for all imported four-wheelers. It's a big step towards aligning with international standards on emissions.
Carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, particulates, the nasty stuff.
Right. To clarify, Euro V applies to 2, 3, and small four-wheelers under 350 kilograms. But Euro 6, the stricter one, is for larger vehicles, goods vehicles over 3.5 tons, and all passenger cars, basically.
And Nepal's journey here has been a bit stop-start, hasn't it?
It has. Went from Euro 6 in 99 straight to Euro 3 in 2012. Then things stalled, even though there was talk of Euro 6 back in 2014.
So this jump to Euro 6 is quite significant.
It is. Euro 6 is much more advanced, much more efficient at cutting pollution than previous standards.
How are the experts reacting? Cautiously optimistic.
Pretty much. Air quality expert Bhupender Das welcomed it, but stressed that, real benefits depend on effective enforcement.
Right, not just having the standard on paper.
Exactly. Enforcement, infrastructure upgrades, public awareness, it all needs to happen. He also noted it's good, but still not as good as going electric, obviously.
A step, but not the final destination for clean air.
Precisely. It highlights that it's a long road, and consistent effort is key.
All right, let's switch gears completely now. From policy to produce, let's dive into a really fascinating agricultural story. Nepal making a name for itself in specialty coffee.
Ah, yes, this is a great story. Nepal is emerging as this really unique origin in the high-end coffee world.
What makes it so unique? The location?
Partly, it's nestled between China and India with these incredibly diverse microclimates. Coffee grows from 1,000 all the way up to 2,100 meters.
And across many districts?
42 districts are growing coffee now. Places like Gulmi, Argakanchi, Ilim, Panchthar are becoming well known, and the focus is very much on specialty-grade Arabica.
And part of the appeal is just how little there is, right? The rarity factor.
Absolutely. Only 500 to 600 tons produced annually. Tiny compared to, say, Brazil or Colombia. But that scarcity allows for an intense focus on quality.
Aiming for that high cup score.
Minimum 80 points. Plus, it's grown under natural shade, no deforestation, nutrient-rich soils. And they're meticulous about processing, storage, packaging.
Like using those special Ecotact bags.
Exactly. All to preserve the quality and unique flavors. It positions it as a boutique, high-value product.
And it's not just one type of bean, right? There's variety.
Definitely. You've got bourbon, typica, caturra, even heirloom varieties. And while wash processing is common, producers are experimenting with natural, honey, even anaerobic fermentation methods.
So roasters looking for something different, something unique. Nepal offers that.
Precisely. In a competitive market, roasters want differentiation. They want a story. And Nepalese coffee offers this rare, traceable, and deeply human narrative.
But getting it to market must be tough with the mountains and infrastructure.
It's a challenge. But that's where trusted partners like Himalaya Coffee Company come in, bridging that gap between remote farms and global buyers.
And looking ahead, more growth.
The potential is there. Through sustainable expansion, educating farmers, investing in better processing, and there's a growing coffee culture within Nepal, too, in Kathmandu, Pokhara.
Which helps create local demand.
Exactly. And international recognition is growing with presence at big expos like in Houston and MIE 2025. Nepal's really signaling its potential to be a small but high-impact origin known for quality and ethics.
It's a fantastic example. Now, from high-end coffee to something, well, completely different and quite surprising, commercial hornet farming in Miyagdi.
Yes. It sounds unusual, but it's a real local success story for some, like Ashok Shahi in Beni municipality. He started just by collecting 11 nests from the forest.
And his wife mentioned it's also about conservation.
Yeah, Geeta Shahi framed it that way, providing a managed environment, helping conserve the hornets while also generating income.
And the yield is pretty amazing. Up to 8 kilos of larvae from one nest every couple of months.
That's what they're getting. And these larvae are prized locally for their nutritional value. There's a real market.
How much do they sell for?
Uncooked, about Rs 3 to 500 per kilo. Fried, they can go for Rs 600 a plate in local hotels, like Rajan Lamas in Beni.
And the Shahi couple are aiming to sell 100 kilos this year, up from 30 kilos before.
That's their goal. It's just a fascinating, quirky example of rural entrepreneurship finding a very specific niche.
It really is. Okay, from hornets back to a more traditional agricultural icon, Elam tea. Efforts there to revitalize the heritage and boost tea tourism.
Right. Elam is synonymous with tea in Nepal, those rolling green hills. Kanyam Tea Garden is a huge draw, stunning views.
And people can get involved, tea picking photos.
Yeah, activities like that. It's become a popular spot. And historically, Elam's tea garden is the oldest in the country. Planted way back in 1863 AD or 1920 BS, the factory came in 1878 AD. So it has huge research value, too.
So what's being done to promote this more?
The local municipality is quite active. They're planting new tea bushes, planting tea stations for free samples, really trying to immerse visitors.
And asking the central government to make it a research center.
Yes. Mayor Kedar Thapa is clear. Tea should be the central attraction.
But there are challenges. The old garden is run down.
That's a major concern. It's described as dilapidated, and there's a feeling the private sector hasn't focused enough on preservation. It speaks to broader issues of neglected heritage sites.
So it needs to be more than just nice views and photos.
Exactly. Experts like Kishab Kumar Dorali and Devi Pudel suggest showing the whole process: planting, weeding, plucking, processing, tasting, a full immersion.
And more investment needed from government and private sector. Maybe local souvenirs too.
Definitely. Things like tea-themed souvenirs, maybe in nice pine wood or bamboo boxes. There's a lot of untapped potential to make it a comprehensive tea tourism experience.
Okay, moving from agriculture to digital support for Nepalese abroad. Two new mobile apps to talk about. First, the We Mobile app.
Right. This was launched with financial help from the Korean government, working with Nepal's Ministry of Labor.
And what does it offer?
Essential employment info in Nepali and English. Things like skill development resources, financial planning tips, even mental health support. It's meant to be a digital lifeline.
Seems like it aligns with the labor minister's push for transparency in tech.
It does. Minister Sharat Singh Bandari's vision, and the Korean ambassador highlighted how valuable returned migrant workers are as an asset for Nepal.
And the second app, Tram Sansar.
Yes, launched by the Foreign Affairs Minister, Dr. Arzu Rana and Labor Minister Bandari again. This one's focused on data collection.
Real-time data on Nepalese abroad. Status, location, needs.
Exactly. The idea is to help embassies and ministries provide better consular services, enable quicker rescues in emergencies.
And even help undocumented workers get legalized permits.
That's part of the aim. Minister Ron was clear it's not about encouraging illegal travel, but offering protection once people are abroad. There's also a task force now to address diaspora problems more systematically.
These digital tools seem like positive steps. But it's a stark contrast when we turn to human rights, specifically Nepal's failure to enforce its own anti-torture law.
It really is. The National Penal Code from 2017, in force since 2018, criminalizes torture. Up to 5 years in prison, yet not a single conviction.
Not one. That's shocking.
It is deeply troubling. The National Human Rights Commission investigated 55 complaints just last fiscal year. They recommended compensation in 17 cases, action against 16 people, but still no criminal prosecution.
And other groups are reporting incidents too.
Yes. Advocacy Forum Nepal reported 10 incidents in police custody just this year, 2024, and 109 between 2018 and 2023. It's clearly a persistent problem, not isolated cases.
And we saw that recent high-profile case in Kailali jail, Harizing Pali dying just a day after arrest.
Right. A sub-inspector was arrested, but there's widespread skepticism about whether a real prosecution will follow.
So why does this happen? The legal framework seems clear. The Constitution, the Penal Code, UNC Gasters.
The laws are there. Nepal ratified the UN Convention Against Torture. They all strictly prohibit it. But what rights groups point to is a culture of impunity, negligence, and the state's unwillingness to hold perpetrators accountable.
A culture of impunity. That's a strong phrase.
It reflects the frustration. Despite the laws, accountability just isn't happening.
So what are the recommendations? What are groups like Amidst and Advocacy Forum asking for?
Several key things. Amend the penal code, crucially. Get rid of that 6-month time limit for filing complaints. It often makes it impossible to prosecute.
6 months is very short.
It is. They also want independent mechanisms to investigate torture and custodial deaths, like the Pali case. Ensure impartial investigations happen in civilian courts, not military ones.
And regular monitoring of detention centers.
Yeah.
Implementing NHRC recommendations. Compensation.
All of that. Plus, prompt implementation of NHRC recommendations and making sure victims get compensation.
And this ties into broader justice issues too, from the conflict era.
Yes, there are still ongoing demands for truth, justice, and reparations for victims of the 1996-2006 armed conflict. It shows the struggle for accountability is deep-rooted and continues across different contexts in Nepal.
Okay, before we dive headfirst into the complexities of Nepalese politics, just a quick moment to highlight a really useful resource for our listeners in the UK.
Ah, yes, balayat.uk.
Tell us about it.
It's essentially a classified site specifically for the Nepalese community in the UK. Great for finding jobs, housing, seeing what events are on, and connecting with Nepalese-owned businesses locally.
So a real community hub online.
Yeah.
Good to know about balayat.uk.
Definitely worth checking out if you're in the UK.
All right, let's get into it. Politics and governance in Nepal. Starting with a really high-profile corruption case involving former Prime Minister Madhav Kumar Nepal. He's been granted bail in the Patanjali land scam.
That's right. On June 25th, the special court ordered his release on Arpas's $3.5 million bail. This was after a pretty lengthy detention hearing. It's a major development.
So remind us, what's the core accusation here?
The allegation is that during his time as PM between 2009 and 2011, he facilitated the illegal sale of government-exempt land to Patanjali Yogpith and Ayurveda company Nepal, essentially bypassing land ceiling rules.
Allowing land that should have gone to the state to be sold.
That's the claim. That land beyond the ceiling limit should have been nationalized, but wasn't.
And the stakes are huge. The CIA, the Commission for the Investigation of Abuse of Authority, they've filed the case against 93 people, including Nepal.
Seeking serious jail time, 10 to 14 years, and recovery of over $185 million in alleged damages. Plus, he's already been suspended as a lawmaker because of this case.
It's a real test for Nepal's anti-corruption bodies.
Absolutely. And the legal arguments presented in court were fascinating. The prosecution, the CIA lawyer, argued the cabinet decision itself was corruption, not some policy decision immune from scrutiny.
They argued it caused a direct loss to the government.
Yes, because that land should have been nationalized. But the defense, led by senior advocate Shambhu Thapa, hit back hard.
Challenging the CIA's standing.
Right. And citing a 2003 Supreme Court ruling that upheld a similar land exemption, they argued the charges are politically motivated, legally baseless.
And Thapa asked that question. How can there be a government loss when the land never belonged to the government in the first place?
Exactly. A provocative point. It just shows the deep legal and political divisions around this case. It really puts those anti-corruption institutions under the spotlight.
It really does. Holding top officials accountable is always fraught with challenges, isn't it? Okay, let's move to another hot political topic. The visit visa scam and the government's response.
Yes, the government appointed a probe committee on June 24th. A 7-member committee led by former Chief Secretary Shankar Das Bairagi.
Made up of joint secretaries from 6 key ministries: finance, law, tourism, foreign, labor, home.
Right. Home Minister Ramesh Lakak announced it in the House. And the mandate is quite broad.
A 9-point plan. What does that cover?
It's aiming for short-term and long-term reforms, legal, institutional. Investigating the scam itself, but without affecting ongoing CIA probes. Proposing changes to laws, procedures, staffing, coordination.
Studying international practices, making the system more tech-friendly. It sounds very comprehensive.
It does, aiming for systemic change, not just finding scapegoats.
But the reaction from opposition parties has been, well, polarized.
Very much so. The main opposition, the Maoist Center, CPNMC, they initially supported it after that agreement with ruling parties in mid-June.
With conditions, public monitoring, threatening to reject the report.
Exactly. Whereas the Rastriya Swatantra Party, RSP, and the Rastriya Prajatantra Party, RPP, are strongly against it. They've even boycotted parliament sessions.
So why are they so opposed? What's their argument?
Well, Dr. Swarnam Waggle from the RSP called the committee bureaucratic, lacking credibility. He even sort of satirically questioned Bairagi's appointment, suggesting he's too close to power.
What did he want instead?
A high-level parliamentary inquiry, or one led by a judge under the Commission of Inquiry Act, something more independent.
And the RPP, Gyan Bahadur Shahi.
It was even stronger. Accused the government of forming it just to exonerate the accused and cover up the crime. Call it like handing keys to a burglar.
Wow. And he wants a much wider investigation into 14 home ministers over 18 years.
Yes. It shows a profound lack of trust in the government's process here.
And this ties into that wider debate about fairness, doesn't it? The RSP is pointing out the difference in how allegations against their leader, Rabi Lamishane, were handled.
Exactly. When Lamishane faced allegations in the cooperative scams, a high-level parliamentary inquiry was formed, leading to his judicial custody.
So they're demanding the same level of scrutiny for the current home minister, Lekak, arguing for equal application of anti-corruption measures.
That's their core argument. It highlights this perceived double standard and the deep divisions over accountability mechanisms.
Okay, speaking of political dynamics, there's been a significant shift in the ruling coalition. The Janata Samajwadi Party, JSP Nepal, has withdrawn its support.
That's right. Their executive committee decided this over June 23rd and 24th. Spokesperson Manish Suman confirmed they'll now sit in opposition.
What reasons did they give?
They pointed to PM Modi's government failing to deliver on 4 key promises: constitutional amendment, good governance, ending corruption, and economic growth. A clear statement of dissatisfaction.
So what's the immediate impact of them pulling out?
Well, the government has now fallen into a minority in the National Assembly, the upper house.
Let's break down those numbers. How does it stack up now?
Okay, the National Assembly has 59 members. Before JSP left, the government side had Maoist Center, 18, Nepali Congress, 16, Unified Socialist, 8, and JSP Nepal, 3. That's 45, plus maybe support from LSP 1 and the independent one.
And UML has 11.
Right, so with JSP Nepal's 3 votes gone, the core government support drops significantly, likely below the majority mark of 30.
Does that mean the government collapses?
Not automatically, legally speaking. Losing the majority in the National Assembly isn't the same trigger as losing it in the House of Representatives. But
It makes things difficult.
exactly. As the sources say, business concerning bills brought to Parliament may be affected. Passing legislation in the upper house could become much harder, potentially stalling the government's agenda.
And JSP Nepal has its own internal issues too, right? That split earlier this year.
Yes, Ashok Rai and others forming a new JSP party back in May, that's still tangled up in the Supreme Court, adds another layer of complexity.
Okay, let's wrap up the politics segment by looking at the Rastriya Swatantra Party, the RSP. 3 years since they burst onto the scene.
It feels longer, doesn't it?
Okay.
They came in with such momentum, anti-status quo, anti-corruption, led by Rabi Lamachane.
Huge success in the 2022 elections. Fourth largest party, 20 seats, then 21 after a by-election.
But it's been a real roller coaster since then. Joined the government twice, briefly, with the Maoists, and then UML, now back in opposition.
And observers are saying that initial glow has dimmed. Talk of a leadership void.
That's the narrative emerging. And the central issue, of course, is Rabi Lamachane himself being in judicial custody.
Over those cooperative embezzlement allegations in 5 districts.
Yes. Kathmandu, Kataski, Rupandehi, Chawan, Parsa. The cases are still ongoing, sub judice.
And the party line is political vendetta, because he investigated others.
That's what they maintain. Spokesperson Manish Shah says Lamachane was targeted for going after big names in the Bhutanese refugee scam, Juri Bandhu Patanjali.
But the courts have indicated involvement.
So far, the legal proceedings suggest evidence linking him. It's a conflicting picture.
So how is all this affecting the party? Public perception? Internal?
Well, observers argue they didn't really fulfill their opposition mandate, rushing into government twice, and maybe didn't live up to the good governance hype.
But the party dismisses talk of losing momentum.
Jaha says the focus should be on the ruling coalition. But the leadership void is undeniable. DP Ariel is acting president. The General Convention got postponed from April to next March. Shows how central Lamachane still is.
And there have been internal conflicts. And that by-election loss in Ilam.
Yeah, the fallout with former General Secretary Mukul Dakal and the Ilam 2 defeat last year definitely raised questions about whether their appeal was sustainable.
But they still have strengths. Diaspora mobilization, youth engagement.
Absolutely. They're very effective there. Several lawmakers are abroad right now doing diaspora programs. Ariel in Qatar, Karki in the U.S., Parajuli in Australia. Dr. Waggle is active too. They connect well with Gen Z.
But the overall feeling from observers is what? That they become part of the system.
That's the critique, that they seem a bit directionless, facing internal rifts. It raises big questions about their future as this alternative politics force heading towards the 2027 elections.
Okay, let's shift our focus now to the diaspora directly, and some important updates. First, that new directive from the U.S. Embassy in Kathmandu regarding social media.
Yes, this is significant. Effective June 26, 2025, anyone applying for an F, M, or J non-immigrant visa.
So students, vocational trainees, exchange visitors.
Right. They are now requested to set their personal social media accounts to public.
Requested. But it feels pretty mandatory if you want the visa. What's the official reason?
The embassy says it's to facilitate vetting necessary to confirm identity and determine admissibility. They frame every visa decision as a national security decision. So it's about enhanced screening.
But this immediately raises flags about privacy, doesn't it? Social media is personal, often casual expression.
Exactly. The concern is that making accounts public could expose applicants to scrutiny or judgments unrelated to their visa eligibility. Misinterpretations, old posts taken out of context.
It puts young Nepalese wanting to study or go on exchange programs in a tricky position, balancing security needs with digital privacy.
It's a complex balance, definitely. Asking people to open up a very personal part of their lives raises ethical questions about digital footprints in these processes.
Okay, on a more positive note for global connections, the ongoing rescue efforts for Nepalese citizens in Iran.
Yes, good news there. 7 more Nepalese were evacuated from Mashhad to New Delhi just this Wednesday, June 25th, with crucial help from the Indian government.
And that follows 2 others rescued earlier in the week.
Correct. Ganesh Prasad Pokharel and Suman Gayer. So it's a coordinated effort that seems to be working.
And this is part of a larger group, people who work in Tehran.
Yes, 11 Nepalese in total. They'd worked in diplomatic missions, restaurants, some for many, many years, 8 to 24 years. They were initially stuck without exit permits.
And this is happening amidst those regional tensions. The Iran-Israel ceasefire adds complexity.
Absolutely. It highlights the importance of international collaboration. The Indian embassy in Tehran coordinated the evacuation after Nepal appealed for help.
And most are heading back towards Butwal.
That's the plan for most of them. Gayatri Karkitapa and her son, Bishnu Prasad Busal, Budi Busal, Sagar Paldel, Yagimar Sini, Raju Kanal. One person, Hari Tapa, works at the Indian embassy and resumed duties.
But one person is still there.
Unfortunately, yes. Bishnu Prasad Banjad remains due to issues with his travel documents. Shows that even in successful operations, there can still be individual hurdles.
Right. Okay, let's take a quick detour from the headlines now. A moment for our Did You Know segment.
All right, let's transport ourselves far away from the cities and politics. Deep in the Himalayas, there's a place called the Narfu Valley.
Narfu. I've heard of it, but it's quite remote, isn't it?
Extremely remote. You need a special permit just to enter. It's considered a true hidden gem, offering these dramatic, unspoiled landscapes.
And a glimpse into old Tibetan culture.
Exactly. Because it's remained largely untouched by mass tourism, it has preserved its unique character, its centuries-old traditions.
Can you paint a picture for us? What's it like?
Imagine ancient stone villages just clinging to the cliffsides. You'll find centuries-old monasteries like Tashi Lakang, said to be blessed by Guru Rinpoche himself.
Wow.
And you see yak-herding locals still living very traditional lives, almost like stepping back in time.
So for trekkers looking for something really authentic, off the beaten path.
Absolutely. If you want raw wilderness, genuine cultural encounters, without the crowds you might find near Everest or Annapurna Base Camp, Narfu offers that solitude. Towering peaks, pristine nature. It really feels like a journey into the past.
Sounds incredible. A world away.
It really is a different side of Nepal altogether.
And just like that, another deep dive comes to a close. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We really have. From the Gwarko underpass signaling progress to the Samkoshi Marin delays showing the challenges.
The political dramas, the Patanjali land scam bail, the visa probe controversy, the JSP withdrawal, the RSP's crossroads.
And those crucial diaspora connections, the new U.S. visa policy, the Iran rescues, it really shows how interconnected everything is.
And our aim, as always, is to cut through that information overload for you.
Give you the context, the nuances, the insights behind the headlines shaping Nepal and the global Nepalese community. Equip you with more than just facts.
So, as Nepal keeps navigating this complex path development, political shifts, here's a thought to leave you with.
How might this blend we see ancient traditions, like the culture preserved in Narfu Valley, interacting with very modern challenges, like social media visa policies? How might that blend shape the future identity of the Nepalese diaspora around the world?
It's a fascinating question, touching on Nepal's past, present, and future.
We really encourage you to keep exploring, keep staying informed. You can find more in-depth articles, look back at our past deep dives, and connect with the wider community at nepalidiaspora.net.
That's nepalidiaspora.net. Thank you so much for diving deep with us today.
We'll be back next week with more essential insights.